Hello everyone. Welcome to Realist Quill. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? I never should have arrived at night. That was my first mistake. The Golden Gate Hostel sat on the outskirts of San Francisco, a Victorian-style building that had seen better days. My flight had been delayed, and by the time my rideshare dropped me off, it was nearly midnight. No restaurants were open. No convenience stores, just the dim yellow light above the hostel entrance, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. The lobby smelled of mildew and something chemical, like cleaning supplies that couldn't quite mask what lay beneath. A young man with bloodshot eyes manned the reception desk, his gaze never fully meeting mine as I checked in. "Room 212, he said, sliding a key across the counter. "Up the stairs, end of the hall. Try not to wake the others." The key was old-fashioned, heavy brass with a plastic tag. No electronic keycards here. As I climbed the narrow staircase, each step creaking beneath my weight, I wondered if I should have splurged on a hotel instead. But on a graduate student's budget, this place was all I could afford. The hallway was dimly lit by wall sconces that flickered intermittently, giving the faded floral wallpaper an animated quality. Room 212 was the last door on the right, the brass numbers tarnished to near illegibility. Inside, the room contained 6 bunk beds, all but one appearing occupied. Soft breathing and occasional snores filled the space as I tiptoed to the empty bottom bunk. The mattress was thin but cleaner than I'd expected. I changed quickly in the dark and slipped under the covers, exhausted from 20 hours of travel. Sleep came quickly, but it didn't last. I woke to the sound of the door opening around 3 a.m., according to my phone. Through half-lidded eyes, I watched a figure enter, tall, impossibly thin, moving with a strange fluidity. I assumed it was another guest, returning late, and closed my eyes again. The footsteps didn't stop at any of the beds, though. They circled the room, pausing briefly beside each sleeper. When they reached my bunk, I kept my breathing steady, feigning sleep. Cold fingers brushed against my forehead, so cold they burned. I fought the urge to flinch or open my eyes. The touch lingered for what felt like minutes before withdrawing. The footsteps continued their circuit of the room. I risked peeking through my eyelashes. The figure stood at the foot of the bunk, across from mine, silhouetted against the faint light from the window. It was unnaturally tall, its head nearly touching the ceiling. Not human, at least. Not anymore. As if sensing my gaze, it turned. I squeezed my eyes shut immediately, heart hammering so loudly I was certain it would give me away. The footsteps approached my bunk again, stopping beside me. I felt its presence looming, heard a sound like paper being crumpled as it leaned closer. "Not yet," whispered a voice like dry leaves scraping concrete. Still too new. The door opened and closed again. When I finally gathered the courage to look, the room contained only sleeping travelers, no sign of the nocturnal visitor. At breakfast the next morning, I studied my roommates, wondering if they'd experienced anything similar. They seemed normal enough. A German couple, an Australian backpacker, 2 American college students, tired but not unusually so for travelers. "Sleep well?" asked one of the Americans, a girl with short blue hair. "Not really," I admitted. "I think someone came into our room last night." The table fell silent. The German couple exchanged glances. "The night manager," said the man finally, his accent thick. "He checks the rooms sometime." "At 3 in the morning?" I asked. The blue-haired girl lowered her voice. "You saw him?" Something in her tone made me hesitate. "I think so." "Tall? Too tall?" asked the Australian. "Moves like he's underwater." I nodded slowly. "He only checks the new guest," explained the girl. "Been happening since we arrived last week. We thought we were going crazy until we compared notes." "What does he want?" I asked. The German woman shrugged. "To see if we're ready, whatever that means." "Ready for what?" Nobody answered. The Australian pushed his plate away. Appetite gone. "There used to be 8 of us in the room. he said finally. 2 disappeared 3 nights ago. Left all their stuff behind. Maybe they just moved to another room, I suggested. The blue-haired girl shook her head. Reception says they checked out, but their backpacks are still under their beds. Who leaves without their passport? That afternoon, I noticed the vacancy sign in the hostel window. Never changed, despite the front desk turning away several walk-ins, claiming they were full. When I returned to room 212 that evening, the missing travelers' belongings were gone, their beds freshly made as if they'd never been there. That night, I wedged a chair under the doorknob before going to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of wood scraping against floor tiles as the chair slid slowly across the room, moved by an unseen force. The door opened. The tall figure entered. This time, it went directly to the Australian's bunk. "Ready," it whispered, placing both hands on his forehead. The Australian's eyes opened, but they were vacant, staring at nothing. He rose mechanically from his bed and followed the figure to the door without resistance, without collecting any of his possessions. I remained frozen in my bunk, unable to call out, unable to intervene. As they reached the threshold, the figure turned to survey the room once more. Its face, if you could call it that, was a blank canvas of stretched skin, with only the suggestion of features, like a mannequin left too close to a heat source. Its gaze fell on me. A mouth appeared where none had been before, splitting into a grin too wide for any human face. Soon, it promised, and then they were gone. In the morning, the Australian's bunk was empty, his backpack still underneath. The front desk insisted he'd checked out during the night. The remaining guests avoided eye contact at breakfast, eating quickly before dispersing for the day. I should have left then. I should have grabbed my things and found another place to stay. But curiosity, that fatal human flaw, kept me there. I wanted to know what happened to the people who were ready. That night, I only pretended to sleep. When the door opened at 3 a.m., I was prepared, my phone set to record under my pillow. The night manager moved differently this time, with purpose rather than its usual drifting quality. It went directly to the blue-haired girl's bunk. "Ready," it announced. She rose without protest, eyes open but unseeing. As they moved toward the door, I slipped my hand under my pillow and pressed record. The flash went off. The night manager froze, then slowly turned toward me. The girl continued to the door and waited, automaton-like. "Curious," said the thing that was not human, its voice like stones grinding together. "That's how they start. The ones who become like me." It glided to my bunk with impossible speed, looming over me. Up close, I could see what I'd missed before. The staff uniform stretched over a form that only approximated humanity. The name tag that read simply "Manager," with no actual name. "The curious ones watch first," it continued, reaching toward me with elongated fingers. "Then they stay, then they become. How long have you worked here now?" Confusion washed over me. I'm just staying here. I checked in yesterday." The thing tilted its head at an impossible angle. "No, you came 5 years ago, just like me, just like all the others. The curious ones who stayed too long." My denial died in my throat as memories suddenly surfaced. Memories of standing behind the reception desk, of making beds, of moving silently through hallways at night, checking the new arrivals. I looked down at my hands, really looked for the first time since arriving. They were pale, the fingers slightly too long, the nails yellowed and thick. My name tag read Assistant Manager. "I've been working at the Golden Gate Hostel for 5 years now. I checked in for 1 night and never checked out. Sometimes I remember being someone else, having a life beyond these walls. Mostly, I just make my rounds at 3 a.m., checking the new arrivals, waiting for them to be ready. You should be careful where you stay when traveling. Not all hostels are what they appear to be. And some of us who work here never applied for the job. We just stayed too long. 1 bed left," the receptionist told me, not looking up from her computer. In a 6-person mixed dorm, 50 euros per night. Take it or leave it. I was about to leave it, walk right out of Pension Venecia, and try my luck elsewhere. But a thunderclap shook the windows, followed by the intensified drumming of rain. July in Venice, and I was soaked to the skin. My backpack probably not much drier. With the Biennale in full swing, finding alternative accommodation would be nearly impossible. I'll take it, I said, handing over my passport. The receptionist, Valeria, according to her name tag, processed my information with mechanical efficiency. Room 307, 3rd floor, bathroom down the hall, curfew at midnight, breakfast from 7 to 9. She slid a heavy iron key across the counter. No visitors, no noise after 10, no exceptions. I nodded, too exhausted to care about the strict rule. The day had been a disaster from start to finish. Missed connections, lost luggage, and now this deluge. All I wanted was a dry place to sleep. Room 307 was at the end of a narrow corridor, the floorboards creaking beneath the faded runner. The building had probably been grand once, with its high ceilings and ornate moldings, but decades of budget hospitality had left it worn and tired. I knocked before entering, common courtesy when sharing accommodations. No response. When I pushed the door open, I discovered why. The room was empty. 6 iron-framed beds were arranged around the perimeter of a surprisingly spacious room, 3 on each side. Each had a small locker beside it. Only one bed lacked personal belongings spread across it, the one in the far corner, which I claimed. The absence of my roommates was explained by a poster on the back of the door advertising a pub crawl starting at 7. Given that it was now almost 9, they were probably well into their evening of revelry. Perfect. I'd have some quiet time to dry off, organize my things, and maybe find a nearby restaurant for a late dinner. I peeled off my wet clothes, changed into dry ones, and hung the damp items wherever I could. As I was arranging my meager possessions in the locker, the door opened. A young woman entered, early 20s, Asian, wearing a yellow raincoat. "Oh, hello," she said, seeming startled to find someone in the room. "You must be taking the last bed." "Just arrived," I confirmed. "I'm Julia." "Me," she replied, removing her raincoat to reveal dry clothes underneath. "Smart traveler. Aren't you going on the pub crawl? Everyone else is." "Too tired," I admitted. "You didn't go either." She shook her head, moving to the bed closest to the door. "I don't drink. Besides, I wanted to call my family tonight." She gestured to her phone. "Time difference makes it complicated." We chatted casually as I finished organizing my things. Me was from Singapore, traveling through Europe for the summer before starting graduate school. She'd been in Venice for 3 days already, and offered some recommendations for places to see that weren't overrun with tourists. "There's a good restaurant just around the corner," she added. "Small place, family owned. The seafood pasta is amazing." My stomach growled on cue. "That sounds perfect. I can show you," she offered. I was thinking of getting dinner myself. 20 minutes later, we were seated at a tiny table in exactly the kind of authentic local restaurant tourists dream of finding. Me proved to be an excellent companion, knowledgeable about the city, funny, and considerate. By the time we finished our meal, I was glad to have met her. "When did you check in?" I asked as we walked back to the hostel. 3 days ago, she replied. "I'm staying for a week total." "And our roommates? What are they like?" May's expression shifted slightly. "They're fine. A couple from Germany, an American guy, and 2 British girls traveling together. You probably won't see much of them except when they're sleeping off their hangovers." Back at the hostel, we signed in with the night receptionist. Hostel policy required everyone to check in upon returning, and headed up to our room. It was just past 11, and there was still no sign of the others. "They'll be back around 2 or 3, May said, as if reading my thoughts. "They always are." I was too tired to wait up for introductions. After a quick trip to the bathroom down the hall, I returned to find May already in bed, scrolling through her phone. "Good night," I called softly. Sleep well, she replied. Don't mind the noise when they come back. I drifted off quickly, lulled by the sound of rain against the windows and the distant rumble of thunder. The sound of the door opening woke me. Through half-closed eyes, I watched as 4 figures stumbled in, trying unsuccessfully to be quiet. They whispered and giggled, bumping into furniture. Typical drunk hostel guests. Shh, one of them hissed. New person sleeping. They quieted somewhat as they prepared for bed, though there were still occasional bursts of stifled laughter. I was about to turn over and go back to sleep when something caught my attention. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I could make out 5 figures now moving around the room. 5, not 4. And May was still in her bed, which meant I did a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4. New arrivals, plus May, plus me. 6 people in a 6-person room. So who was the 7th figure standing motionless in the corner? I squinted through the darkness. The shape was humanoid but somehow wrong. Too tall, too thin. Its proportions subtly off. None of the others seemed to notice it as they climbed into their respective bed. I must be dreaming, I thought, or it's a trick of the light. I closed my eyes firmly, willing myself back to sleep. When I opened them again, the figure was gone. Morning brought sunshine and the usual hostile cacophony of alarms, shuffling feet and zipping bags. I sat up to find the room bustling with activity. 5 other travelers in various states of dress moved around, gathering toiletries and clothes. May noticed I was awake and came over. Sleep okay? I think so, I replied, still unsettled by my midnight vision. Weird dream, she nodded sympathetically. This building is old, makes strange noises at night. The others introduced themselves. Jan and Lena from Germany, Tyler from California, and the British duo Emma and Sophie. They were friendly enough, if slightly hungover, and soon headed down to breakfast. Coming? May asked. I'll be down in a few minutes, I said, needing some time to fully wake up. After they left, I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to shake off the lingering unease from the night before. That's when I noticed something off. On the wall above each bed was a small brass plate engraved with a number 1 through 6. My bed was number 6, but there was a 7th plate on the wall in the corner where I'd seen the figure standing. This one had no number, just a blank brass rectangle, tarnished darker than the other. At breakfast, I asked casually, has room 307 always been a 6-person dorm? Jan shook his head. The receptionist told us it used to be a 7-bed room, but they removed one because it was too crowded. When was this? I pressed. Few years ago, I think, Emma chimed in. Something about fire regulations. That explained the extra number plate, but not the figure I'd seen. The day passed pleasantly enough, as I explored Venice, getting lost in its labyrinthine streets, and taking in the Biennale exhibitions. I returned to the hostel just before curfew, finding May already in bed reading. The others are still out, she informed me. Pub crawl again. I prepared for bed, feeling much more relaxed than the previous night. Perhaps it had just been travel fatigue and an overactive imagination. Around 2 in the morning, I awoke suddenly, unsure why. The room was dark and quiet, too quiet. No rain tonight, no thunder, just the soft breathing of sleeping travelers. I turned on my side and froze. Standing in the corner was the figure from the night before, more distinct now. It was indeed human-shaped, but wrong in subtle ways. Limbs too long, neck at an odd angle, face obscured by shadow. It stood beneath the blank number plate, perfectly still. As I watched, paralyzed, it moved, not walking but gliding to the foot of Tyler's bed. It stood there for several minutes, unmoving, before drifting to Lena's bed, then Jan's. At each, it paused as if observing the sleeper. When it approached May's bed, I shut my eyes tight, heart pounding. I counted to 100, then risked peeking. The figure now stood at the foot of my bed, up close. I could see it wasn't solid but translucent, like fog given human form. Through it I could make out the wall behind. It had no discernible face, just darker patches where eyes might be. "Who are you?" I whispered, surprising myself. The figure tilted its head at an impossible angle. When it spoke, the sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Seventh." It said the word like static in my mind rather than actual sound. "Always seventh." "Seventh what?" I managed to ask. "Seventh bed, seventh death." The words came in bursts of static. 1976. Fire. Forgotten. A chill ran through me. There was a fire here. The figure drifted backwards. Not forgotten by all. She remembers. She was there. Before I could ask who she was, the door to the room opened. The night receptionist stood in the doorway, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The figure vanished like mist. "Everything okay in here?" the receptionist asked, her light moving from bed to bed. "Thought I heard voices. Just talking in my sleep," I lied. "Sorry." She lingered in the doorway, scanning the room once more before leaving. As the door closed, I noticed May sitting up in bed, watching me with an unreadable expression. "You saw it," she said. It wasn't a question. "The seventh guest," I replied. "Yes." May sighed heavily. "I was hoping you wouldn't." "What is it? A ghost?" "Something like that." She moved to sit on the edge of my bed, speaking in hushed tones. "There was a fire here and 7 students died in this room. They've renovated since then, obviously. Changed the layout, reduced the capacity to 6. But the 7th one, it's still here. Not everyone can see it. But you can," I said. She nodded. "Every night since I arrived. I thought I was losing my mind until I did some research. Found old newspaper articles about the fire. One of the victims was named Mei Lin, like me, but not quite. That's quite a coincidence." "Is it?" She looked toward the corner where the figure had stood. "The receptionist was working here when it happened. Valeria. She was young then, just started the job. She's the one who found them afterward." I remembered the mechanical, distant quality of the receptionist who had checked me in. Has she worked here all this time? 49 years, May confirmed. She feels responsible somehow. She's the one who makes sure there's always someone in room 307 who can see the 7th guest. Someone to remember. How would she know who can see it? May turned to look at me directly. "Haven't you wondered why she put you in this room when there are other vacancies in the hostel? She said this was the last bed available." "She always says that, but look at us, you and me, both traveling alone, both with the family name Len somewhere in our ancestry, both born in July. She knows the pattern by now." I felt cold despite the summer warmth. "What does it want from us?" "Recognition," May said simply. "The 7th victim was never officially identified. No family came forward. No one claimed the body. In the official record, the 7th bed didn't exist, and so neither did its occupant. That's why the number plate is blank," I realized. She nodded. "Every July, around the anniversary of the fire, it becomes more active. It needs someone to acknowledge it existed. And that's us, this year's witnesses. Until the end of the week," May said. "Then I leave, and you'll be the only one until someone else comes who can see it." I glanced toward the corner, half expecting to see the figure again. "Does it hurt anyone?" "No," May assured me. "It's sad more than dangerous. Just make sure you acknowledge it when you see it. Say good morning, good night. Use the word 7 when you can. It helps." For the remainder of my stay, I did as May suggested. Each night, the 7th guest would appear, making its rounds from bed to bed before lingering near mine. I would whisper acknowledgments, small offerings of recognition that seemed to satisfy it. On my last morning, as I packed my bags, I noticed the blank brass plate had changed. Overnight, someone had engraved a small, almost imperceptible number 7 in the corner. At reception, Valeria processed my checkout with the same mechanical efficiency she'd shown when I arrived. But as she handed back my passport, our eyes met briefly. Did you sleep well in room? She asked, her first deviation from procedural conversation. Yes, I replied. All 7 of us did. Something flickered across her face. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude. She nodded once, then turned to the next guest in line. As I left Pensione Venezia, I glanced up at the 3rd floor windows. In one I saw a figure watching, not May or any of the other guests, but a translucent shape, barely visible in the morning light. I raised my hand in a small wave of goodbye. For a moment, I thought it waved back. We're doing bed checks in 30 minutes, announced the hostel manager, a stern-faced woman named Petra. Anyone without a valid keycard will be removed. No exceptions. I shifted uncomfortably on the common room sofa. After 20 hours of travel from Toronto to Budapest, all I wanted was sleep. But my bunkmate had other plans. Within minutes of my arrival at the Danube River hostel, she'd hung a sock on our door handle, the universal signal that privacy was needed. So here I was, exiled to the common area, until her romantic encounter concluded. The place was mostly empty at this late hour. Just me, an elderly backpacker dozing in the corner, and a young couple whispering intensely by the vending machines. Bed checks? I asked a passing staff member, a thin young man collecting empty cups. Is that normal? New policy, he replied, his accent thick but English clear. Too many unauthorized guests staying overnight. Management is cracking down. He glanced at his watch. The cleaning staff will check every room at midnight. If you're not in your assigned bed with your keycard, you'll be asked to leave. But my roommate has company, I explained awkwardly. He shrugged. Not my problem. Rules are rules. As he moved away, he added over his shoulder, if I were you, I'd go back now. The cleaning staff doesn't like to be kept waiting. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Still, the thought of interrupting whatever was happening in my room seemed worse than facing disapproving cleaner. I decided to wait a little longer. At 11:45, the common room lights flickered once, twice, 3 times. The dozing backpacker startled awake, checked his watch, and hurried toward the dormitories. The whispering couple quickly followed suit. Last warning, called Petra from reception. Bed checks in 15 minutes. I sighed, gathered my things, and trudged reluctantly to my assigned room on the 3rd floor. The sock was gone from the door handle. A good sign. I knocked anyway, just to be safe. No answer. I swiped my keycard and entered to find the room empty. No sign of my roommate or her visitor. Her belongings were still there, but she was gone. The other 4 beds in our 6-person female dorm remained unoccupied according to reception, though one had a backpack on it that hadn't been there earlier. Too exhausted to question this stroke of luck, I changed quickly and collapsed into my assigned bottom bunk. Sleep came almost instantly. The sound of the door opening woke me some time later. Through half-closed eyes, I saw a figure enter, tall, dressed in what appeared to be a cleaner's uniform. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the hallway light behind. Keycard check, announced a female voice, flat and emotionless. I fumbled for my keycard on the small shelf beside my bed, holding it up groggily. The cleaner approached, taking it from my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. As she examined my card in the dim light, I got a better look at her. She wore the standard navy uniform of the hostel staff, but something was off about her appearance. Her face seemed oddly smooth in the shadows, features indistinct except for her eyes, which reflected the hallway light, like a cat's. Valid, she declared, returning my card. You may stay. She moved to the next bed where my roommate's belongings lay. After examining the empty mattress, she made a small notation on her clipboard. No occupant, she murmured, added to the list. She'll be back, I said, feeling strangely compelled to defend the absent girl. She just stepped out. The cleaner turned toward me, movements unnaturally fluid. Past curfew, no keycard presented. Rules are rules. Before I could respond, 2 more cleaners entered, both as tall as the first, both moving with the same unsettling grace. Without speaking, they began gathering my roommate's belongings, methodically packing everything into her backpack. Wait, I protested, sitting up fully now. You can't just take her stuff. She paid for the bed. None of them responded or even acknowledged that I'd spoken. They worked in perfect synchronization, like parts of a single organism. Within minutes, all trace of my roommate had vanished. One of them stripped the bed, while another remade it with fresh linens. What happens to her things? I asked as they finished. The first cleaner paused at the door. Storage, 48 hours, then disposal. And if she comes back? The cleaner's head tilted at an odd angle. They rarely do. With that cryptic statement, all three left, closing the door silently behind them. I sat in the darkness, suddenly wide awake and uneasy. What had just happened seemed extreme, even for strict hostel policies. And something about the cleaning staff felt deeply wrong. Their movements, their voices, their blank expressions. Sleep eluded me for hours afterward. Just as I was finally drifting off again, the door opened once more. Expecting the return of the cleaners, I tensed, but it was my roommate who stumbled in, giggling softly. "Sorry if I woke you," she whispered, noticing I was awake. Lost track of time, I sat up, confused and relieved. "Your stuff, the cleaning staff took everything." She laughed. "What are you talking about? My stuff is right here." She gestured to her bed, which was indeed covered with her belongings, exactly as they had been before the cleaner's visit. Had I dreamed the whole thing? I switched on my reading light, blinking in the sudden brightness. My roommate's possessions were undeniably there. Her clothes draped over the bed frame, her toiletries arranged on the shelf, her backpack leaning against the wall. "There was a bed check," I insisted. "3 cleaners came in and packed up all your things because you weren't here." She looked at me strangely. "Are you okay? I've been staying here for 5 days and there's never been a bed check." But the manager announced it. "Petra, in the common room." "Petra." Now she looked concerned. "There's no manager named Petra. The guy who runs this place is called Mikla." Short guy, beard. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. But I checked in with her just today. Tall woman, strict brown hair in a bun. My roommate sat on her bed, expression serious. "Look, maybe you're confused from jet lag or something. I'll introduce you to Miklos in the morning. Get some sleep, okay?" Too tired to argue, I switched off my light and lay back down, mind racing. Had I imagined everything? Was this some elaborate joke? In the morning, my roommate was gone again, her bed neatly made. I hurried downstairs to reception, determined to sort out the confusion. Behind the desk sat a short, bearded man, presumably Miklos. "No sign of Petra." "Excuse me," I began. "I'm a bit confused about something. When I checked in yesterday, I dealt with a woman named Petra, who said she was the manager." Miklos frowned. "No, Petra works here. I've managed this hostel for 15 years. Then who checked me in?" I pulled out my key card as proof. "Someone took my payment, assigned me a bed." He examined the key card. "This is valid, but..." He typed something into his computer, brow furrowing deeper. "According to our system, room 306 is completely empty. No booking." "That's impossible. I slept there last night. I have a roommate, blonde, Australian girl." Miklos shook his head. "Room 306 has been unoccupied for weeks. We're renovating after a water leak damaged the ceiling." He gave me a concerned look. "Are you sure you're in the right hostel?" I pulled out my booking confirmation on my phone and showed it to him. His expression changed from confusion to alarm. "This confirmation is dated 3 years ago," he said quietly. "No, that's wrong. I just booked it last week." I grabbed my phone back, checking the date, May 15, 2023, exactly as it should be. Miklos showed me his computer screen. The date displayed was May 15, 2020. "This is some kind of joke," I said, voice rising. "Where's Petra? Where's my roommate? Please calm down, Miklos replied, reaching for the phone on his desk. I think you might be confused or unwell. Let me call someone who can help. I backed away from the desk. I'm perfectly fine. I checked in yesterday with Petra. Tall woman, brown hair in a bun, wearing a black blazer. At this description, the color drained from Miklos's face. How do you know that? Who told you about her? I told you she checked me in. He came around the desk, lowering his voice. Petra Kovacs was the night manager here 3 years ago. She died during her shift. Heart attack. They found her at the reception desk the next morning. My blood ran cold. That's not possible. I spoke with her yesterday. She was very much alive. Listen to me carefully, Miklos said, gripping my arm. Room 306 was Petra's office before we converted it to a dormitory. After she died, strange things started happening. Guests reporting seeing a woman matching her description. Items moving. Voices at night. 3 guests disappeared from that room 2 years ago. Just vanished, leaving all their belongings. We closed it for renovations as an excuse to keep people out. If the room is closed, I asked slowly, how did I sleep there last night? Miklos released my arm, stepping back. You couldn't have. The door is locked. The key in my office. Show me, I demanded. Reluctantly, he led me upstairs to the 3rd floor. The corridor matched my memory exactly. Worn carpet, cream-colored walls, room numbers in tarnished brass. Room 306 had a do not disturb sign hanging from the handle. That's my roommate's sign, I said. She put it up last night. Miklos shook his head, producing a key from his pocket. This room has been locked for months. When he opened the door, we both froze in the threshold. The room was set up as a dormitory, exactly as I remembered. 6 beds, 3 bunks, small shelves beside each one, but it was completely empty of people and possessions, except for my backpack sitting neatly on the bottom bunk I'd slept in. That's mine, I whispered. How is it here if the room's been locked? Miklos backed away, crossing himself. This isn't possible. I stepped into the room, drawn to my backpack. When I unzipped it, everything was there. Clothes, passport, toiletries, exactly as I'd packed them. But tucked into the front pocket was something I didn't recognize. A Danube River hostel keycard with my name on it, dated May 15th, 2020. What's happening? I asked, showing Miklos the card. His face went ashen. That's Petra's handwriting. He pulled out his phone, showing me the date, May 15th, 2020. What year do you think it is? 2023, I replied automatically. I flew in from Toronto yesterday, May 14th. Miklos shook his head slowly. Today is May and according to this, he held up the keycard. You checked in yesterday. But there's no record in our system. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. The cleaning staff, tall people, moving strangely, checking keycards at midnight. We don't have night cleaners, Miklos said. The cleaning is done in the morning by 2 local women who've worked here for years. Short, middle-aged sisters. Then who were they? The ones who came to my room last night. Miklos's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. There have been stories after Petra died. Some guests reported seeing tall figures in cleaning uniforms, moving through the halls at night. We thought they were just rumors, ghost stories. They said my roommate was added to the list when she wasn't in her bed. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What list? Before Miklos could answer, the door to room 306 slammed shut between us. I heard him shouting, trying the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The lights in the room flickered, then went out completely. In the darkness, I heard the sound of a clipboard being picked up, pages turning. No keycard presented, came a familiar flat voice behind me. Past curfew, rules are rules. I turned slowly to find 3 tall figures in navy uniforms standing between me and the door. Their faces were no longer shadowed, but smooth and featureless, like mannequins with only suggestions of eyes and mouths. I have my keycard, I said, holding up the one I'd found in my backpack. See? Valid until May 16th, 2020. The central figure took the card, examining it. Invalid date. This guest checked in May 14th. It tilted its head. Temporal discrepancy added to the list. The other two began approaching me, moving with that same fluid grace that seemed more like floating than walking. Wait, I pleaded, backing away until I hit the wall. There's been a mistake. I'm registered. Ask Petra. At the mention of her name, all three figures froze. The temperature in the room dropped dramatically, my breath fogging in the air. Petra is no longer in charge of registration, said the central figure. Petra has been promoted. She oversees the list now. What list? I demanded, desperation making me bold. What happens to the people you take? They serve, replied the figure simply. As we serve, as you will serve. Understanding dawned horribly. The cleaning staff. You're all former guests. The figure nodded, its featureless face stretching into what might have been a smile. We maintain order. We enforce the rules. We clean thoroughly. From down the hallway came the sound of a keycard being swiped, a door opening. The figures turned as one toward the sound. New check-in, said one. Verification required. Complete the current task first, ordered the central figure, turning back to me. Unauthorized temporal presence must be removed. As they closed in, I made a desperate lunge for the door, surprising them with my sudden movement. The handle still wouldn't turn, but my pounding and screaming finally got Miklos's attention on the other side. I heard him shouting for someone to bring the master key. The cleaning staff moved unhurriedly toward me, confident in their inevitability. Their hands, I now saw, ended not in fingers but in what looked like cleaning implements. Rags, brushes, scraping tools. Your presence is an anomaly, said the leader. You do not belong in this time. You must be removed, like all stains. The door burst open as Miklos returned with security. The sudden light from the hallway seemed to confuse the cleaning staff, who retreated toward the shadows in the corners of the room. Run, Miklos shouted, holding the door open. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my backpack and bolted past him, down the stairs, through the lobby, and out onto the Budapest street. I didn't stop running until I reached a busy cafe several blocks away. When I finally dared check my phone, the date displayed was May 15, 2023. My present, my time. But a new email notification had appeared in my inbox from the Danube River Hostel, thanking me for my stay 3 years ago, hoping I would visit again. Attached was my final bill and a staff evaluation form. At the bottom, a personal note. Thank you for your patience during the midnight bed check. Our cleaning staff noted your cooperation. Your temporal anomaly has been registered and will be addressed during your next stay. We value your business across all timelines. PK, Eternal Night Manager. I never return to Budapest. I avoid hostels entirely now. But sometimes, usually around midnight, I notice my room becoming unnaturally cold. I hear the scratch of a pen on a clipboard. Pages turn, and I always keep my keycard ready to present when asked. Because some cleaning staffs don't just remove stains and trash. Some remove people who don't belong. The Crossroads Backpackers Hostel sat on the outskirts of Edinburgh. A converted Victorian house with peeling paint and sagging gutters. Not my first choice of accommodation. But after missing my train to London and discovering every decent hotel booked for the festival, I had few options. 4 nights, I told the receptionist, a gangly young man whose name tag read Connor. Just until the next available train. Lucky you, he replied, typing my details into an ancient computer. Got 1 bed left in the mixed dorm, £8 per night. He glanced up. You'll be sharing with 3 others. One's been here a while. I raised an eyebrow at this. Hostels weren't typically places people stayed long term. How long is a while? Connor's fingers paused on the keyboard. Mr. Harrow, going on 6 months now. Keeps to himself mostly. You probably won't see much of him. I paid the fee, collected my key, an actual metal key, not the electronic cards most places used now, and followed Connor's directions to the second floor. Room 7 was at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of damp and disinfectant. Inside, the room contained 4 single beds arranged around the perimeter, with a small window overlooking the rear garden. 2 of the beds showed signs of occupation, rumpled sheets, personal items on the adjacent shelves. The third, in the corner furthest from the door, was different. This bed was immaculately made, the corners of the blanket tucked with military precision. A small trunk sat at its foot, secured with a heavy padlock. The wall beside it was bare, except for a calendar, outdated, showing March of the previous year, with all the days X'd out in red ink. "That's Mr. Harrow's space," came a voice behind me. I turned to find a young woman standing in the doorway, early 20s, blue-streaked hair, backpacker standard wrinkled clothes. "I'm Lily," she continued, moving to one of the occupied beds. "That's my spot. The other one belongs to Sanjay. He's out sightseeing." She nodded toward the pristine corner. "Nobody touches Mr. Harrow's things. House rule." "Nice to meet you. I'm Rachel," I replied, claiming the remaining bed. "What's the deal with this Harrow person?" "The receptionist mentioned he's been here a while." Lily sat on her bed, lowering her voice. "It's weird. He checked in last year, September or October, I think. Paid for a week, then just never left. They say he rarely goes out, leaves his bed for meals, then returns. Always keeps to himself. That's unusual. It gets weirder," she continued, warming to her subject. "Connor told me Mr. Harrow used to have a good job, nice house, normal life. Then something happened. Connor wasn't clear on what, and he just walked away from everything. Showed up here with one suitcase and that locked trunk. I glanced at the trunk, wondering what it contained, and the hostel just lets him stay indefinitely. He pays on time," Lily shrugged. "And I guess having a steady long-term guest is good for business, especially in the off-season." Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sanjay, a cheerful Indian student who'd been exploring the castle. As we exchanged pleasantries, I noticed neither of them seemed particularly bothered by sharing space with the mysterious Mr. Harrow. "You probably won't even see him," Sanjay assured me when I asked. "He comes in very late, leaves very early, like a ghost." That night, after returning from a pub dinner with my new roommates, I settled into bed with a book. Lily and Sanjay had gone to a club, promising not to wake me when they returned. The old house creaked and sighed around me as rain began pattering against the window. I must have dozed off, because the sound of the door opening startled me awake. The room was dark except for my reading light. A figure stood in the doorway, tall, thin, dressed in clothes that seemed slightly too large for his frame. Mr. Harrow, I presume. He didn't acknowledge me, simply closed the door and moved to his corner with slow, deliberate steps. Up close, I could see he was older than I'd expected, perhaps mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair cut short. His face was gaunt, deeply lined, his eyes fixed straight ahead as if seeing through the walls. "Hello," I offered politely. "I'm Rachel, just checked in today." He paused, turning slightly toward me, his eyes pale gray, almost colorless, moved over my face without seeming to register my presence. 193, he said, his voice a dry whisper. "I'm sorry, days. 193 day." With that cryptic statement, he turned away, sitting on the edge of his bed with his back to me. I switched off my light, unsettled but not alarmed. Hostels attracted all types, and Mr. Harrow, while odd, seemed harmless enough. In the darkness, I heard the sound of a key turning in a lock, the trunk being opened. The faint glow of a small light emerged from his corner. Curious, I squinted through the gloom. Mr. Harrow was hunched over the open trunk, examining something inside that emitted a soft blue illumination. I couldn't see the contents, only his face bathed in that eerie light, lips moving silently as if reciting something from memory. After several minutes, he closed the trunk, locked it, and lay down fully clothed on top of his perfectly made bed. When I woke the next morning, his bed was empty, the trunk securely locked, the corner looking as untouched as when I'd arrived. Lily and Sanjay were still asleep, having returned in the early hours. Over breakfast in the hostel's shabby dining room, I asked Connor about my strange roommate. 193 days, I said. That's what he told me last night. What does it mean? Connor glanced around before leaning closer. That's how long he's been here. He keeps count. Every morning he crosses another day off his calendar, counting down to something or up from something. Both, maybe. Connor shrugged. Look, Mr. Harrow doesn't bother anyone. He's quiet, clean, pays on time. That's all that matters to management. I spent the day exploring Edinburgh, determined to enjoy my unexpected layover. When I returned that evening, I found a small X marked on the current date of my travel planner that I'd left on my bed. Did either of you touch my planner? I asked Lily and Sanjay, who were preparing to go out again. Both denied it. Maybe Mr. Harrow. Sanjay suggested, though he doesn't usually touch other people's things. He wasn't even here. Lily pointed out. I've been in the room all afternoon. I examined the mark more closely. It matched the red X's on Mr. Harrow's calendar exactly. That night, I deliberately stayed awake, pretending to read but watching the door. Shortly after midnight, Mr. Harrow entered. This time, he noticed me immediately. 194, he said without preamble. Why did you mark my planner? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He tilted his head, studying me with those colorless eyes. You're counting too. Everyone's counting something. Days passed, days remaining. He moved to his bed. You have many days left. I have few. Few days left. Here at the hostel? Are you checking out soon? A smile flickered across his face, brief, humorless. In a manner of speaking. Again, he opened his trunk. This time I deliberately shifted position to better see inside. The blue glow illuminated what appeared to be photographs. Dozens of them spread across what looked like a map. As Mr. Harrow moved them around, I caught glimpses of faces, smiling, laughing, unaware they were being photographed. I recognized one of them with a jolt. The blue-haired girl in the image was unmistakably Lily, captured walking down a street I'd passed earlier that day. Before I could process this, Mr. Harrow looked up sharply, catching me watching. His expression remained impassive, but he closed the trunk immediately. 200 is an important number, he said, locking the trunk securely. A milestone, a completion. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, listening to the rhythm of 3 other people breathing, wondering if I should warn Lily about the photograph. But what would I say? That our strange roommate was collecting pictures? It wasn't illegal, just unsettling. The next morning, Mr. Harrow's bed was empty as usual, but something had changed. The calendar on the wall now had a large circle around a date, 6 days in the future. Date at breakfast. Neither Connor nor the other staff members had seen Mr. Harrow. I didn't mention the photographs or the marked calendar, still unsure what to make of it all. That afternoon, as I returned from another day of sightseeing, Connor called me over to reception. Change of plans, he said, looking uncomfortable. We need to move you to a different room. Why? I asked, immediately suspicious. Room 7 is being reserved. For privacy reasons, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Mr. Harrow has requested the entire room for the next week. Management approved it since he's paying for all 4 beds. When was this decided? This morning. He left a note and enough cash to cover it. Connor handed me a new key. Room 3. Just down the hall. You'll be sharing with 1 other person instead of 3. As I gathered my belongings from room 7, I noticed more changes to Mr. Harrow's corner. The calendar now had additional markings, symbols I didn't recognize, drawn around the circled date. The trunk was gone. In its place sat a small red notebook. I hesitated only briefly before picking it up. Inside, written in the same red ink as the calendar marks, was a journal. Most entries were short, clinical observations. Day 47, subject 3 departed. Replacement arrived same day, female, early 20s, German, unsuitable. Day 11, 112, subject 8, showing awareness, increased proximity, potential candidate. The entries continued, documenting the comings and goings of hostile guests. With growing horror, I realized Mr. Harrow had been observing everyone who stayed in room 7, assessing them for some unknown purpose. The most recent entry chilled me to the bone. Day 19-4, subject 12, female American, late 20s, demonstrates heightened perception. Notice the collection. Adjusting timeline. Day 200 now confirmed for transition. All preparations in place. I slammed the notebook shut, heart racing. The transition was scheduled for the day circled on the calendar, 6 days from now. And I was clearly subject 12. I should have left immediately. Checked out, found another place to stay, reported my findings to someone. Instead, driven by a morbid curiosity, I still can't explain, I searched the room for the missing trunk. I found it under his bed, unlocked. Inside were not photographs, as I'd thought, but something far more disturbing. Dozens of small rectangular pieces of paper that resembled photographs at first glance, but were actually meticulously drawn portraits in red ink that looked uncomfortably like dried blood. Each portrait was labeled with a name, a room number, and a date. With mounting dread, I recognized former roommates Lily and Sanjay among them, along with people I'd seen around the hostel. The most recent addition was my own face, my name, with day 200 written beneath it. Beneath these portraits was a map of the hostel, with room 7 circled repeatedly in that same red ink. Scrawled across the map in jagged letters were the words, "Thin place. Passage opens day 200. A noise in the hallway startled me. I quickly replaced everything, slid the trunk under the bed, and placed the notebook exactly where I'd found it. I grabbed my belongings and hurried to my new room, mind racing. That night, I researched thin places online, Celtic locations where the barrier between worlds was supposedly weaker. To my dismay, the area where the hostel stood was mentioned in several accounts as a historical thin place, a site of ancient rituals. I didn't sleep. Instead, I formulated a plan to expose Mr. Harrow's disturbing behavior to the hostel manager. In the morning, I would demand to see his trunk, show them the notebook, the portraits. But morning brought shocking news. Connor, pale and shaken, informed the guests that Mr. Harrow had been found dead in the hostel garden shortly after dawn. Heart attack, they think, he explained, voice unsteady. He was just lying there on the ground, staring at the sky. Must have happened during the night. I felt a complex mix of relief and confusion. If Mr. Harrow was dead, then the transition he'd planned for day 200 would never happen. Whatever disturbed scenario he'd been preparing for was over. Out of morbid curiosity, I asked to see room 7 one more time, claiming I'd forgotten something. Connor, distracted by the police presence, handed me the key without question. The room was exactly as I'd left it, with one glaring exception. Mr. Harrow's corner was completely empty. Bed stripped, calendar gone, no sign of the trunk or notebook. It looked as if no one had occupied that space for months. Connor, I asked when I returned the key, what will happen to Miss Harrow's belongings? He looked confused. What belongings? He never kept anything here, except a change of clothes in the locker. No personal items at all. That's what's so weird. It's like he knew he was going to die. Nothing to pack up, nothing to send to family. But his trunk, I insisted, the calendar on the wall, his notebook. Connor's expression grew concerned. Are you feeling okay? There was no trunk. Mr. Harrow traveled light. That's what everyone remarked on. Just the clothes he wore day after day. I didn't argue further, too disturbed by the implications. Had I imagined it all? Or had someone removed all evidence of Mr. Harrow's true nature and plans? That night, my new roommate went out, leaving me alone. Unable to sleep, I found myself drawn back to room 7, using the key I'd neglected to return. I entered the dark room. It was empty of people but not of sound. Whispers filled the space. Dozens of overlapping voices just below the threshold of comprehension. The corner where Mr. Harrow had slept glowed faintly blue, the light seeming to emanate from the wall itself. As I watched, frozen in place, the glow intensified, forming a rough doorway shape. Through it, I could see something. Another room, similar to this one but somehow wrong. The proportions distorted, the colors muted and strange. A figure stood in that otherworldly doorway. Tall, thin, dressed in clothes slightly too large for its frame. Not Mr. Harrow, but something wearing his general shape, his appearance an ill-fitting costume. 195, it said in Mr. Harrow's dry whisper. The counting continued. The transition approaches, its colorless eyes fixed on me. Thank you for noticing the signs. Few do. It makes you perfect. I backed away, reaching blindly for the door to the hallway. You can't leave, the thing wearing Mr. Harrow's likeness said. You've been chosen. Day 200 comes regardless of this temporary setback. You're dead, I managed to say. They found your body. A sound emerged from it, dry and rattling, a parody of laughter. Bodies are temporary accommodations. Mine served its purpose, counted its days, created the thin place. It gestured to the glowing doorway. Soon another will be ready. Yours, perhaps, or another who notices. The transition requires awareness. I fled, slamming the door behind me. I checked out of the Crossroads hostel that night, fabricating an emergency that required my immediate return home. I never mentioned what I'd seen in room 7 to anyone. That was 5 years ago. I've avoided hostels since then, avoided traveling alone. But I still keep count, marking off each day in my planner with a small discreet line. Not read, never read. Because day 200 came and went without incident, as did day 500. Yesterday was day 1, and this morning I found my planner marked with a red X over today's date. A date I've been dreading, though I never knew exactly why until now. Day 2000, the transition approaches, and somewhere in some hostel room, a thin place is opening.